Hello again, everybody. The Martyrdom of Polycarp, Bishop of Smyrna. One of the grimmest stories of the earliest days of the church was the martyrdom of Polycarp. He was a native of Smyrna, modern Izmir in Turkey, born in 69 AD, the year when Rome had 4 emperors. Being hailed as emperor that year was more or less accepting a death sentence. Polycarp rose through the ranks of the church and became a much respected and revered bishop. As time had passed on since Nero's persecution of 64 and Domitian's great persecution of the 90s AD, Rome had come more or less to tolerate the church as it had spread, and by the middle of the 2nd century, it was really quite a big deal indeed. The Emperor Trajan's letter to Pliny in the early 2nd century showed that the Roman government was only really interested in Christianity when it became a law and order issue, with the people rising up against the Christians and saying they didn't like him very much. In 155 AD, however, a major persecution was underway in the Roman province of Asia, modern Turkey. We know quite a bit about this from an account of the martyrdom of Polycarp. It's highly coloured and doubtless with the gruesome details stressed to encourage the faithful in later times. Nonetheless, it shows how Roman justice and entertainment were not so very far from each other. Listen for the details of how things were planned in this extract. We are writing to you, brothers, about the martyrs and the blessed Polycarp, who put the seal, so to speak, on the persecution by his martyrdom and brought it to an end. Some were lacerated by lashes. The Roman scourge was made of leather, heavily weighted with pieces of metal, perhaps like the one used to scourge Jesus, so that the bodily structure as far as the veins and arteries was made visible. They endured so that even the bystanders pitied and lamented, a bit like after Nero's persecution. The fire of the inhuman torturers was cold for them. In the same way, too, those who were condemned to the beasts endured terrible punishments and were forced to lie upon pointed trumpet shells and suffer other kinds of variegated tortures, so that the tyrant might, if possible, by continuous tormenting, bring them to recant. Well, certainly not being spared any of the details there. Polycarp was denounced fairly shortly after all this, and didn't make much attempt either to run away or to resist arrest. When he was brought to the arena in the middle of the amphitheatre, the sand, the arena of the amphitheatre, he was pressed by the proconsul, the Roman governor, to recant, but he declined. Now the Roman governor tried again, clearly trying to not have a confrontation at this point. But Polycarp said, 86 years have I served Christ, and he has done me no wrong. How can I blaspheme the king who saved me? This incidentally shows how we know the year that he was born. The proconsul then pronounced him guilty, and the spectators then shouted, "This is the teacher of Asia, Turkey, the father of the Christians, the destroyer of our gods, teaching many not to sacrifice or worship." With such cries, they demanded that Philip the Asiarch, who was a local priest, should let loose a lion. Here we see justice and entertainment conjoined. I wonder what Judge Rinder would have said. Then the crowd changed their mind and shouted that instead he should be burnt. He was tied to a post, surrounded by wood, charcoal, and other kindling which had been gathered from bathhouses and the like, and he was then burnt alive. Or at least he nearly was, but miraculously his body was not consumed. The confector was sent in and he was stabbed to death. The job of the confector was to finish off any people who were in the arena and hadn't certainly been killed. So the confector was sent in, he was stabbed to death. His body was then cremated, along with 11 others who'd been martyred on the same day in the same place. So what message should this have for us? We should be courageous under challenge, be faithful, and never let justice be coupled to entertainment as if it's a spectator sport.